Having an amazing day. Oh wait, let me make sure yes it is, okay. I want to make sure you can hear my audio, just to make sure. And I hope everyone is having an amazing day. And we are gonna get right into the book. We are gonna be reading, how many chapters did I say in the title? 3 chapters. So hopefully we're gonna get through all 3 chapters. Little tea, not coffee. That'd be a bad idea just to do it with.
Who wants to play video games?
Hi, Curly. Oh, Winter actually set up a thing in the Discord just now that you can go the thumbs up on, and you can get little notifications. I don't have to text you individual times when I'm live. You just get a little notification from the Discord that I'm live. And let's get into it. Chapter 10. One more water, just in case. Okay. Chapter 10. When his servants entered, he looked at him steadfastly, and wondered if he had thought of peering behind the screen. The man was quite impassive, and waited for his orders. Dorian lit a cigarette, and walked over to the glass, and glanced into it. He could see the reflection of Victor's face perfectly. It was like a placid mask of servility. There was nothing to be afraid of there. He thought it best to be on his guard. You should wait a little longer. I don't think we're... Yeah, but this is how my stream was yesterday. We didn't have that many people. So we can wait for a couple seconds. If you would like. If you want to chat for a bit, that's fine. That's fine. That's fair enough. Yeah, we can wait a little bit. Where did she put this? Did she put it in general? Or in rules? I think she put it in rules. Oh, who already said yes to that? Wait. People already said yes to that? Easy. Okay. So, how you're feeling better then? Okay. I think we are good to start the stream. Let's wait until 3 minutes. So, just a little under a minute left. What was I gonna say? Yeah. We are 3 away from 100 followers. A couple streams ago, there was a gambling thing where people placed bets on how far you would make it. Did you set that up? Rio set that up. I'm not sure how Rio did that. You can text him and get him to come in my stream and do that. I'm not sure. I enjoy that heavily. He needs to, yes, you can text him. Because he was not in my stream earlier. I think we should get going, but I will stop if you are in chat. Chapter 10. When his servants entered, he looked at him steadfastly, and wondered if he had thought of peering behind the screen. The man was quite impassive. He waited for his orders. Dorian lit a cigarette and walked over to the glass and glanced into it. He could see the reflection of Victor's face perfectly. It was like a placid mask of servility. There was nothing to be afraid of there, yet he thought it best to be on his guard. Speaking very slowly, he told him to tell the housekeeper that he wanted to see her, and then to go to the frame maker and ask him to send 2 of his men round at once. It seemed to him that the men left the room and his eyes wandered in the direction of the screen. Or was that merely his own fancy? After a few moments, in her black silk dress with old-fashioned thread mittens on her wrinkled hands, Mrs. Leaf bustled into the library. He asked her for the key to the schoolroom. The old schoolroom, Mr. Dorian? She exclaimed. Why, it is full of dust. I must get it arranged and put straight before you go into it. It is not fit for you to see, sir. It is not indeed. Well, I don't want it put straight, Leaf. I only want the key. Well, sir, you'll be covered with cobwebs if you go into it. Well, it hasn't been open for nearly 5 years, not since his lordship died. He winced at the mention of his grandfather. He had hateful memories of him. That does not matter, he answered. I simply want to see the place, that is all. Give me the key. Here is the key, sir, said the old lady, going over to the contents of her bunch with tremulous, uncertain hands. Here is the key. You'll have it off the bunch in the morning. But you don't think of living up there, sir, and you are comfortable here. Oh, no, no, he cried petulantly. Thank you, Leaf. That will do. She lingered for a few moments, and was garrulous over some detail of the household. I keep messing up my words. He sighed and told her to manage things as she thought best. She left the room, wreathed in smiles. As the door closed, Dorian put the key in his pockets. Hey! Hey! How are you doing? Okay, let's go back in the book. Okay. As the door closed, Dorian put the key in his pockets and looked around the room. His eyes fell on a large purple satin coverlet. Oh, sorry for the ads. I'm so sorry. His eyes fell on a large purple satin coverlet, heavily embroidered with gold. A splendid piece of late 17th century Venetian work that his grandfather had found in the convent near the Bologna? That's not Bologna. That's not... What? Okay. Skip over that. Yes, that would serve to wrap the dreadful thing up. It had perhaps served often as a pall for the dead. Now it was to hide something that had corruption of its own, worse than the corruption of death itself, something that would breed horrors and yet never die.
Will you give him a drink of water, for Christ's sake?
Oh, okay. A little water. No! 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 Well, there's the chaoticness my last stream was missing. Okay. What the worm was to the corpse, his sins would be to the painted image of the canvas. They would mar its beauty and eat away its grace. They would defile it and make it shameful, and yet the thing would still live on. It would always be alive. He shuddered for a moment. He regretted that he had not told Basil the true reason why he had always wished to hide the picture away. Basil would have helped him to resist Lord Henry's influence, and that still more poisonous influences that came into his own temperaments. Are you having a viewing party? The love that he bore him, for is it really love, had nothing to do with that. I keep jumping on my words. Was not noble and intelligible. That's a weird way to put intelligent. Okay, I keep forgetting it's like 19th century writing. It is not the mere physical admiration of beauty that is born from the senses and that dies when the senses tire. It was such love as Michelangelo had known, and I'm gonna butcher this. Monsignor and Weckelmann and Shakespeare himself, and yes, Basil could have saved him, but it's too late now. The past could always be annihilated. This is I'm doing horrible today. I get not used to 5 people immediately. It's making me nervous. Annihilated, regret, denial, and forgetfulness couldn't do that, but the future was inevitable. There were passions in him that would feel the terrible outlet, dreams that would make the shadow of their evil real. He took up from the couch the great purple and gold texture that covered it. Holding it in his hands, passed behind the screen. Was the face in the canvas viler than before? Okay. You actually saw my outfit just like 5 minutes ago, but okay. Do a little fit check real quick. This is Shutterstruck's first interpretation of my reading streams. This is how chaotic it is. Okay. This is my outfit today. It's very basic. I have my thrifted cardigan, a tank top, and this. Yes. And my necklace too. I made him do it so I don't waste points, okay? That was for Greg. Yeah, he just said you asked, yeah. Okay, I need my tea again. Was the face in the canvas viler than before? It seemed to him that it was unchanged, and yet his loathing of it was intensified. Gold hair, blue eyes, and rose-red lips. They were all there. It was simply the expression had altered. That was horrible in its cruelty, compared to what he saw in it, of censure or rebuke. How shallow Basil reproaches about Sybil Vane had been. How shallow and of little account. His own soul was looking out at him from the canvas and calling him to judgment. A look of pain came across him as he flung the rich pall over the picture. As he did so, a knock came from the door. He passed out as the servant entered. The persons are here, Monsieur. He felt as if the man must be rid of him. He must be rid of it at once. He must not be allowed to know where the picture was been taken to. There was something sly about him. He had thoughtful, treacherous eyes. Sitting down the writing table, had scribbled a note to Lord Henry, asking him to send him around something to read and reminding him that they were to meet at 8:15 that evening. Wait for an answer, he said, handing it to him, and showed the men in here. In 2 or 3 minutes there was another knock, and Mr. Hubbard himself, the celebrated frame-maker, South
Will you
Audrey.
give me a drink of water for Christ's sake?
It has not already been 5 minutes. No way, it's already been 5 minutes. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm actually in the process of cleaning it. I can show a little bit of it. Oh, not. Actually, wait, never mind. You can see it. No, you can see a little bit of it. That part's very messy. Oh, we're just gonna ignore that part. But yeah, it's I'm gonna say what I have over there. I have 4 bookshelves right there. I have my Fallout collection that's right out of frame. My crystal collection. I'll clean it tomorrow. If somehow you're on my stream tomorrow, you will see it clean. How many bookshelves do you have? I have... Why is there so many people? There's so many new people. I have 3 actual bookshelves. But then I have... Oh, thank you. I have 3 actual bookshelves.
_wizard,
And then I have another thing I use as a bookshelf. My goodness.
Tessellation _
I
police
have
followed your
a
channel.
CD rack not a CD rack. It's like a CD, like it's like opens up at like a little shelf thing, like a little cabinet, but it's for CDs, and it's just smaller books there. Unfortunately, no. Oh, I don't have any. What? Okay, sorry. If you ever do talk and stream, can you show off the crystals? Yeah, I can. And you are oh, I'm at 99 of 100? Oh my goodness. This is my favorite book. The Picture of Dorian Gray. We are reading my favorite book. Actually, I do think I have one Bible in there somewhere, actually. I like collecting books and actually reading the I don't like just collecting them, I like reading them too. How many times have you read it? This is my 3rd read. Oh, this is actually, okay. My 3rd reread, but my first time reading this edition. I've only read this version. This is the Penguin's cloth-bound edition of it. I have read this one twice. This is my first read of this one. Which I can already see, okay, so it's been like a year or 2 since I read it, so I'd say about 2 years, actually, since I've read it, so it's a bit It's kind of like, I know what happens, like I know that, but like I'm little tidbits I'm noticing. And I like how this edition has, I know, there's also this one too. I may have to have 3 editions of it. I really want the graphic novel version of it. This is the uncensored picture Dorian Gray, which is the original picture Dorian Gray before Oscar Wilde had to censor it because it was written in 1890, where it's like, where he had to change some things because they were actually used as evidence against him because being homosexual back then was a crime. Uncensored meaning that it's like a thing. This is actually, I want to say, it's just things he had to take out that were like used against him. There's nothing explicit in it, but it's just like things that in the 1800s were like, oh, this should not be in books, like things like that. Yeah. I want to get his novellas. I don't have any of his novellas, sadly. I only have his one novel. Why is my phone going off? Oh, that one. Okay, let's get back in the book. And I'm so happy that that feel free to talk actually is working this time, because so many people like hop in my streams and just stay there but don't talk. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, like, my last stream was very quiet, and I love when there's a little bit of chaos. So this is back to normal. This is my normal streams. It's very nice. Okay, let's get back into it after a sip of tea. Where did I leave off? Oh, my phone. I need to turn my phone on silent. Uh-oh. No, okay, now my phone's on silent, so you should not be able to hear that anymore. He thought that the man must be got rid of at once. He must not be allowed to know where the picture has been taken to. There was something sly about him. He had the thoughtful, treacherous eyes. Sitting down on the writing table, he scribbled a note to Lord Henry, asking him to send him round something to read and reminding him that they were to meet at 8:15 that evening. I have not read House of Pomegranates. That sounds very familiar, though. What's it about? That sounds very familiar. Wait for an answer, he said, handing it to I don't know why I cannot read handing for some reason. Handing it to him and showed the men in here. In 2 or 3 minutes there was another knock, and Mr. Hubbard himself, the celebrated frame maker of South Audrey Street, came in a somewhat rough-looking young assistant. Mr. Hubbard was a florid, red-whiskered little man, whose admiration for arts was considerably tempered for the inadvertent and okay, it was also my first time reading out loud. So, pomegranates. My first time reading out loud. So a lot of these words I have not actually pronounced out loud. So that's why it seems like I'm kind of like stumbling over my words. By the inadvertent it's like curiosity, but it's incuriosity. Incuriosity? I think that's what it is. Incuriosity. Like it's IMP, then E curiosity. Curiosity. I'm just gonna skip over that. For most of the artists who dealt with him, as a rule, he never left his shop. He waited for people to come to him, but he's always made an exception in favor of Dorian Gray. There is something about Dorian that charms everybody. It was a pleasure even to see him. What can I do for you, Mr. Gray? He said, rubbing his fat, freckled hands. I thought I would do that myself the honor of coming around in person. I have just the beauty of a frame, sir. Picked it up at sale.
Lizard. Cheer one, cheer one, cheer
No,
one,
no.
cheer one, cheer
No,
one.
no. Are you gonna spam
Curly
the cheers
underscore,
again?
underscore,
I really
22,
appreciate
cheer
it.
5 minutes.
It's just because there's no chaos right now. Is that why you're doing this? Okay, for context, for people who are not normally in here, Curly has a habit of sending one bit at a time because of the text-to-speech. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you. And it's actually, he normally does 5, because like, he used to do 1, but I increased it to 5 that pops up. So yeah. Because he's the one that told me to do it. Because he's like, oh, if you move up to 5, I can't spam you as much. So, yeah. There was something about Dorian Gray that charmed everybody. It was a pleasure even to see him. What can I do for you, Mr. Gray? He said, rubbing his fat, freckled hands. I thought I would do myself the honor of coming around in person. I just got the beauty of a frame. Read the other books on stream or first. This is my first. Technically, it is my first stream. Okay, so I did read the Poppy War before I realized all the copyright stuff. So you're only supposed to read books that are public domain books due to copyright. So this is my first book that I'm supposed to read on stream. I have previously read the Poppy War, but yeah, this is my first book that I'm supposed to read. Because I can read any book published before 1923. I think it's off. I think it's off my VODs now, so I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure, because it disappears after 14 days into affiliate. If you're not affiliate, it's after 7. I believe I finished it over 2 weeks ago, so it should be off there by now. I just don't want to risk the copyright. So I can read any book before 1923, or any book that the author has died within the past 70 years. Okay. Where was I? I thought I'd do myself the honor of coming around in person. I just have got a beauty of a frame, sir. Picked it up at a sale. Old Florentine came from the Fontille, I believe. Admirably suited for religious subjects, Mr. Gray. I am so sorry I've given yourself the trouble of coming around, Mr. Hubbard. I shall certainly drop in and look at the frame, although I don't go in much at present for religious arts. But today I only want a picture carried to the top of the house for me. It's rather heavy, so I thought I would ask you to lend me a couple of your men. No trouble at all, Mr. Gray. I am delighted to see any service to you, which is the work of art, sir. This, replied Dorian, lifting the screen back. Can you move it? Cover it and all? It's just as it is. I don't want it to get scratched going upstairs. There will be no difficulty, sir, said the genial frame-maker, beginning with the aid of his assistants to unhook the picture from the long brass chains by which it was suspended. And now where shall we carry it to, Mr. Gray? I shall show you the way. Mr. Hubbard, if you will kindly follow me, or perhaps you had better go to the front. I am afraid it is right to the top of the house. We will go up by the front staircase as it is wider. He held the door open for them as they passed on to the hall, began their ascent. The elaborate character of the frame had made the picture extremely bulky, and now and then, in spite of the obsequious protests of Mr. Hubbard, who was the true tradesman's spirited dislike of seeing a gentleman doing anything useful, Dorian put his hands to it as to help them. Something of a load to carry, sir, gasped the little man when they reached top of the landing, as he wiped his shiny forehead. I am afraid it is rather heavy, murmured Dorian, as he unlocked the door and they opened into the door that opened to the room that was kept for him, the curious seeker of his life, and hid his soul from the eyes of men. Could you read with the voice? Okay, so I'm relatively new to reading it out loud. I do want to get to the point, but I feel like I'm not, comfortable enough doing that yet. In my next book. I'm going to try to do that in my next book. But this one I'm not really comfortable reading out loud yet. Because I think I've only read, one book out loud before this. Yeah. I do want to get up to that point, though. Yeah. I do want to get to that point. He has not entered the place in more than 4 years. Not indeed, since he had used it first as a playroom when he was a child, and then as a study when he grew somewhat older. It was a large, well-proportioned room, which had been specially built for the last Lord Kelso, for them to use for their little grandson, for his strange likeness of his mother, and also for other reasons. He had always hated and desired to keep it at a distance. It appeared to Dorian to have but a little changed. It was a huge Italian caisson, which a caisson is a chest or a coffer. Okay, what I was saying earlier. I am not on Goodreads. Well, I technically am. I just don't really update it. I am gonna try to update it this year. I'm gonna try to get to the point. I am gonna have a link to it possibly tomorrow. I want to cause I have a habit of accidentally forgetting to add my books I read onto there. So when I'm done reading this book, which is in a couple days possibly, I'm gonna put it on. I'm gonna put a link to it possibly tonight or tomorrow, because I feel like that would motivate me to actually update it if it's a link in one of my things. So yeah. I that will be there tomorrow, hopefully. Because I have in my little info section on my Twitch, I have, my TikTok, and I have my gaming channel-ish. It's just basically my Twitch clips from my Minecraft streams or Fallout 76 streams. But I am in the process of making a reading channel, which I also talk about folklore on there. I absolutely love folklore. So it's gonna be basically me talking about folklore and like comparing folklore creatures to different
Will you give him a drink of water for Christ's
one
sake?
second, Willow, Winter. I would like talk about like different interpretations, different folklore creatures, like I can't say that. Okay, the Wendies. I'm gonna say the Wendies. You know what that is if you know folklore. I am very superstitious. I do not like saying that word because you're not supposed to say it in folklore. But like they are very I can't think of words right now. They are not interpreted well in most media. Like actually Fallout 76 is one of which where they are actually a good interpretation of them. I want to say good, but they're a better interpretation opposed to like just a creature with a deer head, a deer skull. So like things like that I would like to talk about on that channel, and maybe do like little book hauls and stuff and whatever, and just talk about books and yeah. So I'm gonna this week I'm gonna be in the process of getting that set up too. So a lot of things are happening this week. Very exciting. um. Yes. That word. That word. Okay, now I'll drink the water, Winter. um, where did I leave off? There's a huge Italian caisson with his fantastical painted panels and his tarnished gilt moldings, in which he had so often hidden himself as a boy. There's a satin wood bookcase filled with his dog-eared schoolbooks. On the wall behind it was hanging some ragged Flemish tapestry where a faded king and queen were playing chess in the garden, while a company of hawkers rode by, carrying hooded birds on their gauntleted wrists. How well he remembered it all! Every moment in his lonely childhood came back to him as he looked around. He recalled the stainless purity of his boyish life, and it seemed horrible to him that he was here the fatal portrait was to be hidden away. How little he had thought in those dead days that all this was that all that was in store for him. While there was no other place in the house to secure from prying eyes as this, he had the key and no one else could enter it. Beneath its purple pall, the face paint on the canvas could grow bestial, sodden, and unclean. What did it matter? No one could see it. He himself would not see it. Why should he watch the hideous corruption of his soul? He kept his youth, that was enough. And besides, might not his nature grow finer? After all, there is no tension that there's no reason that the future should be so full of shame. Soon love might come across his life and purify him, and shield him from those sins that seem to be already stirring in spirit and in flesh. Those curious unpictured sins, whose very mystery lent them their subtlety and their charm. Perhaps some day the cruel look would have passed away from the scarlet sensitive mouth, and he might show to the world Basil Hallward's masterpiece. No, that was impossible. Hour by hour and week by week, the thing upon the canvas was growing old. He might escape the hideous of sin, but the hideous of age was in store for it. The cheeks would become hollow and flaccid. Yellow crow's feet would creep around the fading eyes that made them horrible. The hair would lose its brightness, the mouth would gape or droop, would be so foolish or gross. As the mouths of old men are, there would be the wrinkled throat and cold blue-veined hands and twisted body that he remembered in his grandfather who had been so stern with him in his boyhood. The picture had been concealed. There was no help for it. "Bring it in, Mr. Hubbard, please," he said wearily. Turning around, I also have to work on, my tone when I'm talking out loud. I've been noticing that I'm not, saying words in the way that they're written down, that they're supposed to be said in. I have noticed that, too. So, next book, as we're going into the next book, I want to try to work on it throughout this. It's just, I read too quickly. And I realize, oh wait, I'm supposed to read that in a different tone. Yeah. He said wearily, turning around. I'm sorry I kept you so long. I was thinking of something else." "Always glad to have a rest, Mr. Gray," answered the frame maker, who was still gasping for breath. Where shall we put it, sir?" You mean next book? What? I was thinking, I already read that part. "Always glad to have a rest, sir, Mr. Gray," answered the frame maker, who was still gasping for air. "Where shall we put it, sir?" "Oh, anywhere. Here, this will do. I don't want to have it hung up. Just lean it against the wall, thanks." "Might one look at the work of art, sir?" Dorian startled. It would not interest you, Mr. Hubbard," he said, keeping his eyes on the man he felt ready to leap upon him and fling him to the ground if he dared to lift the gorgeous hangings that concealed the secret of his life. "I shan't trouble you any more now. I am much obliged for your kindness it's in coming around." Not at all, Mr. Gray. Ever ready to do anything for you, sir?" "Ever readily to do anything for you, sir." And Mr. Hubbard trampled downstairs, followed by the assistant, who glanced back at Dorian with a look of shy wonder in his rough, uncomely face. He was never seen anyone so marvelous. When the sound of their footsteps had died away, Dorian locked the door, put the key in his pocket. He felt safe now. No one would ever look upon the horrible thing. No eyes would ever see his shame. On reaching the library, he found that it was just after 5 o'clock, that the tea had been already brought up on a little table of dark perfumed wood, thickly encrusted with a mother of pearl, a present from Lady Radley. I don't remember. Okay, I don't remember seeing that. I'm confused now. I've noticed I do jumble my words a lot, which I need to work on that also. His guardian's wife, a pretty professional invalid, who spent his preceding winter in Cairo, was laying a note from Lord Henry, and besides it was a book bound in yellow paper, the cover slightly torn and the edges soiled. A copy of the 3rd edition of St. James' Gazette had been placed on the tea tray. It was evident that Victor had returned. He wondered if he had met the men in the hall as they were leaving the house, and had wormed out of them what they were doing. He would be sure to miss the picture. That no doubt missed it already. While he had been laying the tea things, the screen had been set back, and a blank space was visible on the wall. Perhaps some night he might find him creeping upstairs and trying to force the door of his room. It was a horrible thing to have a spy in one's house. He had heard of rich men who had been blackmailed all their lives by some servant who had read a letter, or overheard a conversation, or picked up a card with an address, or found beneath a pillow a withered flower, or a shred of crumpled lace. He sat and, having poured himself out some tea, opened Lord Henry's notes. It was simply to say that he set him round the evening paper, and a book that might interest him. that he would be at the club at 8:15. He opened the St. James languidly and looked through it. A red pencil mark on the 5th page caught his eye and drew attention to the following paragraph. Inquest of an actress. An inquest was held this morning at the Bell Tavern, Hoxton Road, by Mr. Danby, the district coroner, and the body of Sybil Vane, a young actress recently engaged at the Royal Theatre Holborn. A verdict of death by misadventures was returned. Considerable sympathy was expressed for the mother of the deceased, who was greatly affected during the giving of her own evidence, and that of Mr. Burrell, who had made the post-mortem examination of the deceased. He frowned and tearing the paper in two, went across the room and flung the pieces away. How ugly it was all. How horribly real. Ugliest made things. He felt a little annoyed with Lord Henry for having sent him the report. It was certainly stupid of him to have marked it with red pencil. Victor might have read it. The man knew more than enough English for that. Perhaps he had read it and had begun to suspect something, yet what did that matter? What had Dorian Gray do with Sybil Vane's death? There was nothing to fear. Dorian Gray had not killed her. His eyes fell on the yellow book that Lord Henry had sent him. What was it? He wondered. He went towards the little pearl-colored octagonal stand that always looked at him like the work of some strange Egyptian bees have wrought in silver, and taking up the volume, flung himself into an armchair and began to turn over the leaves. After a few minutes he became absorbed. It was a strange book that he had ever read. It seemed to him that in exquisite raiment and to the delicate sound of flutes the sin of the world were passing in dumb show before him. Things that he had dimly dreamed of were suddenly made real to him. Things of which he has never dreamed of were gradually revealed. It was a novel without a plot. There was only one character, being indeed simply a psychological study of a certain young Parisian who spent his life trying to realize in the 19th century all the passions and modes of thought that belonged to every century except his own, and to sum it up as if it were in himself the various moods through which the world spirited has ever passed, loving for their merely artificial those ruinations that men had wisely called virtue, as much as though natural rebellions that wise men still called sin. The style in which it was written was one of curious jeweled style, vivid and obscure at once, full of argot. So argot is a slang of rogues. So what I was mentioning earlier was this book has little asterisks in it, and there's little things at the bottom of the page. I forgot the actual name of it. There's an actual name of it. I can't remember. But if there's words that most people don't know, they have it written at the bottom. So that's why I'm explaining certain things, is because they're at the bottom of the page and most people don't know what that means. I do not even know what that means, so that's why and of archaism, of technical expressions, of the elaborate paraphrases that characterizes the work of some of the finest artists of the French school of symbolists. There are some of the metaphors monstrous as orchids, and as subtle in color. The life of the senses was assured in the terms of mystical philosophy. One hardly knew at times whether one was reading the spiritual ecstasies of some medieval saints or the morbid confessions of a modern sinner. It was a poisonous book. The heavy odor of incense came to cling about its pages and to trouble the brain. A mere cadence of the sentences, the subtle monotony of the music, as full as it was of complex refrains and movements elaborately repeated, produced in the mind of the lad as he passed from chapter to chapter a form of reverie, a melody of dreaming that came to him unconscious in the falling day and creeping shadows, cloudless and pierced by one solitary star. A copper green sky gleamed through the windows. He read it by its one light till one could read no more. Then, after his valet had reminded him several times of the lateness of the hour, he got up and, going into the next room, placed the book on the little Florentine table that had always stood at his bedside began to dress for dinner. It was almost 9 o'clock before he reached the club.
Will you give me a drink of water, for Christ's sake?
Okay. I can't see what you said. It's like it has asterisks on it. I don't feel like they're being properly blank. Okay, that's all I see. I don't know why it's doing that. It was almost 9 o'clock before he reached the club, where he found Lord Henry sitting alone, in the morning room, looking very much bored. "I am so sorry, Harry," he cried, "but really it's entirely your fault. That book you sent me is so fascinating to me that I forgot how time was going. Yes, I thought you would like it. Hydrating. I don't know why that was... Okay, that's weird. It's just because I am reading. And I got into a groove, sort of, so that's why I wasn't hydrating. Even though I definitely should have been. Yes, I thought you'd like it, replied his host, rising from his chair. I didn't say I liked it, Harry. I said it fascinated me. There's a great difference. Ah, you have discovered that? Remembered Lord Henry. Another example. I need to fix my tone. And then pass into the dining room. Chapter 11. Oh, tea break. And water break. And I just drink water. Chapter 11. For years, Dorian Gray could not free himself from the influence of this book. For years? Oh, I forgot about that part. Or perhaps it would be more accurate to say that he has never sought to free himself from it. Procured from Paris no less than nine large paper copies of the first edition, and had them bound in different colors, so that he might suit his various moods from the changing fancies of a nature over which he seems, at times, to have almost entirely lost control. The hero, the wonderful young Parisian in whom the romantic and the scientific temperaments were so strangely blended, became to him the kind of prefigure and type of himself, and indeed the whole book seemed to him to contain the story of his own life, written before he had lived it. In one point he was more fortunate than the novel's fantastic hero. He never indeed, that had cause to know that somewhat grotesque dread of mirrors, and polished metal surfaces, and still water which came upon the young Parisian so early in life, and was occasioned by the sudden decay of a bow that had once apparently been so remarkable. It was with an almost cruel joy, and perhaps in nearly every joy, as certain as every pleasure, cruelty has its place, and he used to read the latter part of the book, with its really tragic and somewhat emphasized account of the sorrow and despair of two who had himself lost what in others in the world he had been dearly valued, for the wonderful beauty that had so fascinated Basil Hallward. For many others besides him seemed never to leave him, even those who had heard the most evil things against him. And from time to time rumors about his mode of life crept through London and became the chatter of the clubs. Could not believe anything to his dishonor when they saw him. He had always the look of one who had kept himself unspotted from the world. Men who talked grossly became silent when Dorian Gray entered the room. There was something in the purity of his face that had rebuked them. His mere presence seemed to recall to them the memory of the innocence that they had tarnished. They wondered how one who was so charming and graceful as he was could have escaped the stain of an age that was once sordid and why can I not say that word? Sensual. I don't know why I couldn't say that word. Often on returning home from one of those mysterious and prolonged absences that gave rise to such strange conjure, almost those who were his friends, or though they were so, he himself would creep upstairs to the locked room, open the door with the key that has never left him now, the stand with the mirror, in front of the portrait that Basil Hallward had painted of him, looking now at the evil and aging face of the canvas, and now at the fair young face that laughed back at him from the polished glass. The very sharpness of the contrast used to quicken his senses of pleasure. He grew more and more enamored by his own beauty, more and more interested in the corruption of his own soul. He would examine with minute care, and sometimes with a monstrous or terrible delight, the hideous lines that scarred the wrinkling forehead or crawled around the heavy, sensual mouth. Wondered sometimes, were the more horrible the signs of sins or the signs of age. He would place his white hand behind the coarse, bloated hands of the picture, and smile. He mocked the misshapen body and the falling limbs. There were moments, indeed, at night, when lying sleepless in his own delicately scented chamber, or in the sordid room of the little ill-famed tavern near the docks which, under an assumed name and in disguise, it was his habit to frequent, he would think of the ruin he had brought upon his soul with a pity that was all the more poignant. Pungent. Wait, that's not pungent. Is that pungent? It is pungent. Oh. Because it was purely selfish. But moments such as those were rare. I needed water. Okay. I should not put ice in that. Bad idea. The ice just makes my throat hurt. Tea is so much better to read with. The curious about life, which Lord Henry had first stirred in him, as they sat together in the garden of their friend, seemed to increase with gratification. The more he knew, the more he desired to know. He had mad hungers that grew more ravenous as he fed them. That he was not really reckless, at any rate, of his relations to society. Once or twice, every month during the winter, on each Wednesday evening while the season lasted, he would throw up to the world his beautiful house and have the most celebrated musicians of the day to charm his guests with the wonders of their art. His late dinners in the setting of which Lord Henry always assisted him, noted so much as the careful selection and placing of those invited. You're okay. Don't worry about it. You're okay. Okay. His little dinners in the setting of which Lord Henry had always assisted him were noted so as much as the careful selection and placing of those invited. You're too sweet. You're the one that doing all my Discord server stuff. Were noted so much as the careful selection and placing of those invited. As for an exquisite taste shown in the decoration of the table, with its subtle symphonic, I don't know why I just did that, symphonic arrangements of exotic flowers and embroidered cloths, and antique plates of gold and silver. Indeed, those were many, especially among the very young men, who saw or fancied what they saw in Dorian Gray, the true realization of a type of which they had often dreamed at an Eton on Oxford days. A type that was to combine something of the real culture and the scholar with all the grades and designation of perfect manner of citizen of the world. To them he seemed to be I'm tripping over my words so much. To them he seemed to be the company of those whom Dante described as someone sought to make themselves perfect by the worship of beauty. Like Gaudier, he was one of whom the visible world existed. And certainly to him life itself was the first, the greatest of the arts, and for all the other arts seemed to be but a preparation fashion, by which it is really fantastic becomes from a mode of universal and dandyism, which in its own way is an attempt to assert the absolute modernity of beauty, had of course their fascination for him, his mode of dressing and their particular styles, from time to time he affected, had their marked influence. That is because my room is in a basement. So yes. My room is in a basement. Which explains why my room is like, this is like, what you see is probably like a third of my room. So my room is just the entire basement. I will be making, on my TikTok, I will be making more videos showing my room. I have shown little parts of it throughout, like I've done a bookshelf tour. Oh. I suppose insulation is not good for you. Fashion by which is really fantastic becomes remote and universal dandyism. I already read this part, but I don't know why I'm still reading it, but it's close to where I left off. I am allowed to leave the basement. Just my room is in the basement. Which in its own way is an attempt to assert the absolute modernity of beauty, had of course their fascination for him, his mode of dress and the particular style that from time to time he affected, had their marked influence. On the young exquisites of the Mayfair Ball and Pall Mall Club, windows who copied him in everything as he did, and tried to reproduce the external charms of his graceful, though to him only half serious, frappiers? For while he was too ready to accept the position that was almost immediately offered to him of his coming of age, and found it indeed a subtle pleasure in the thought that he might actually become to the London as his own day to imperial Neronian Rome, the author of the Satyricon once has been. Yet to his inmost hearts he desired to be something more than a mere... Okay, that is in Latin. Okay. I'm just gonna read what it says. A mere Gaius Petronius, arbiter, was considered a judge of tasteful things at the court of... So it's like... So, arbiter elegantarium? Arbiter elegantarium? Which is tasteful things in the court of Emperor Nero. Okay. To be the conduit of a cane. He sought to elaborate some... Oh, no, I just skipped over a line. To be consulted in the wearing of a jewel, or the knot of a necktie, or the conduit of a cane. He sought to elaborate some new scheme of life that would have its reason, philosophy, and his ordered principles. To find in the spiritualizing of the senses his highest realization. The worship of the senses had often, with much injustice, had decried men, feeling a nature instincts of terror about passions and sensations that seem stronger than themselves, and more they are conscious of sharing with the less highly organized forms of existence. But by appearing to Dorian Gray, the true nature of the senses had never been understood, and they had remained savage and animal merely because the world had sought to starve them into submission or to kill them by pain, instead of aiming at making them elements of a new spirituality, of which a fine instinct for beauty was to be dominant personality. I lost my place somehow. Dominant characteristic. As he looked back upon men moving through history, he was haunted by the feeling of loss. So much had been surrendered, and for such little purpose. There had been mad, willful rejections, monstrous forms of self-torture and self-denial. whose origins was fear for those results was a degradation, infinitely more terrible than the fanciful degradation from which, in their ignorance, they had sought to escape. Nature and her wonderful irony. Welcome back, Cool Reading Girl. You read so... Okay, for context, I was playing Minecraft. When did I hit 100? How did I not notice that? Wait. I don't know how I just noticed. How did I not notice that? Did it just not? We hit 100 followers. Oh my goodness. I don't know how. I wish I clipped that when it happened. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's so exciting. Okay. I talked about this on my TikTok, but we are going to be doing a Date Everything playthrough, but with the friend ending for all the characters instead of the love ending. We are doing the friend ending for all the characters because I was thinking, like, since I started making content like on TikTok and on Twitch, I met so many amazing people through that, and I was thinking, like, you meet so many cool people in this game, you can be friends with all of them, and yeah, that's kind of where I got the idea from. Yeah, so we're going to be doing that at some point this week, and it's very exciting now. Now I have to figure out what day we're going to do that, and so I can post on TikTok. Yes, and I'm going to get a little cupcake, or I think it's a tres leche cake, which I did last time when I hit affiliate. I got a little tres leche cake, like a chocolate one, and we put a little candle in it, and we blew out the candle right before the stream, like on the stream, obviously, but like before we played the game that we played. But yeah, we're going to do that. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. It's very exciting. I need to figure it out. No, I'll figure it out. If you're not following me on TikTok, you should follow me on TikTok. Usually I post when I'm streaming, or like my next stream, or things like this, like how I'm gonna, some point this week I'm gonna be doing that. Yeah, I may have forgot to put that I was streaming the reading thing today, but that's a rare exception. Normally I remember. Yeah, it's linked on my little info section on my Twitch. Yeah. That's very exciting. Okay, let's get back into it. I don't know how I didn't notice when that happened. I'm gonna do a little clip of that. So I'm gonna add a marker so I remember to clip what I just said. Okay. Oh no, where do we leave off? Let's just start right there. Let's start a little bit earlier. There has been mad, willful rejections, monstrous forms of self-torture and self-denial. Those origin was fear and those results of no, I already read this part, wait. I know I already read this part, but where would I want to leave off? Okay, I think we're just gonna continue reading that. Whose result was the degradation, infinitely more terrible than the fancy degradation from which, in their ignorance, they had sought to escape. Nature in her willful irony, driving out the incoherent ignorance that had sought to escape. Nature in her wonderful irony. Nope. No, it's crazy though, because I've only been streaming since December 1st. And so I just think that's crazy. I've only been streaming since December 1st. Yeah. Driving out the anchorite to feed with the wild animals of the deserts, and giving to the hermit the beasts of the field of his companions. Yes, that was to be, as Lord Henry has prophesied, a new Hinduism. Or do you see a cat in the background? Did you see a cat in the back? Which cat? Was it like a black cat or was it a white cat? Oh no. No, Hinduism? It's not Hinduism, it's like Hendo. So Hinduism. That was to recreate life and to save it from the harsh, uncomely Puritanism that it's having. In our own day, its curious revival. That was to have its service to the intellect. Certainly yet it was never to accept any theories or system. Was it the black one or the white one? The black one is Loki, and then the white one is Bella. Or, well, Loki is black and white, but he's mainly black. And then so he's a Norwegian forest cat mixed with a little tabby cat, like a black tabby. No, it's tabby cat. No, it's just a black cat. I don't know what type of cat he was, but his mom's a black cat though. Then Bella is a Himalayan cat. Yes, happy 100. It's crazy. Yeah, that was Loki. He's a big boy. He's like 15 pounds. I think ish. I think Bella's only like 5 or 6 pounds. A new Hinduism that was to recreate life and to save it from the harsh, uncomely Puritanism that is having, in our own day, its curious revival. It was to have at its service of the intellect, certainly, yet it was never to accept any theories or system that would involve the sacrifice of any mode of passionate experience. Its aim, indeed, was to be experience itself, and it was not the fruit of experience, sweet or bitter, as they might be, of the eccentricism that deadens the senses, as the vulgar prophet. There's so many words in here that I keep forgetting it's from the 19th century. Porphyllogy that dulls them. It was to know nothing, but it was to teach man to concentrate on himself unto the moments of life that in itself was a moment. There is a few of us who have not sometimes wakened before dawn, neither after one of the dreamless nights that make us almost enamored of death, or one of those nights of horror and mishap and joy, when those of the chamber of the brain swept phantoms more terribly than the reality itself. And the instinct with the livid life and lurks into all grotesques that lends to Gothic arts and its enduring vitality, this art being one in my fancy, especially the art of those minds have been troubled with the malady of reverie. Gradually white fingers crept through the curtains, and they appeared to tremble, in black fantastic shapes. Dumb shadows crawled in the corners of the room and crouched there. Outside there was a stirring of birds among the leaves, or the sound of men going back and forth, going forth in their works. Not going back and forth, just going forth in their works. Was the sigh and sob of the wind coming down from the hills and wandering around through the silent house, as though it feared to wake the sleepers and yet must need call forth to sleep in her purple cave. Veil after veil of thin, dusky gauze, it's lifted, and by degrees in the form of colors of things are restored to them. And we watched the dawn remaking the world of its antique patterns. The wane of mirrors get back their mimic life. The flame-like taper stands where we had left them, and beside them lies the half-cut book we had been studying, or the wild flower that we had worn to the ball, or the letter that we had been afraid to read, or that we read too often. Nothing seemed to us changed. Out of the unreal shadows of the nights comes back in the real life that we had known. We had the resume of where we had left off, and there steals over us the terrible sense of this necessity for the combination of energy and the same wearisome sound of stereotyped habits, or a wild longing, it may be, that our eyelids might open some mornings up a world that had been refashioned anew to the darkness of our pleasures, a world of which things would have fresh shapes and colors, and to be changed or have other secrets a world of which the past would have little or no place to survive at any rate, in no conscious form or obligation or regrets, the resemblance even of joy having its bitterness in the moment's pleasure or their pain. It was the creation of such words as this that seemed to Dorian Gray to be the true object, or amidst the true objects of life. In his search for sensations that would have once new and delightful, possessed the elements of strangeness that is so essential to romance. He would often adopt certain modes of thought he knew to be really alien to his nature, abandon himself to their subtle influences, and then, having, as it were, caught their colors and satisfied his intellectual curiosity, leaving them with that curious indifference that is not incompatible with the real ardor of temperament, and that indeed, according to certain modern psychologists, is often the condition of it. It's water. Where did I leave off? Condition of it, condition of it, condition of it. It was rumored to him once that when he was about to join the Roman Catholic communion, and certainly the Roman ritual had always been a great attraction to him, the daily sacrifice, more awful really than all the sacrifices of the antique world, stirring himself as much as its superb rejection of the evidence of the senses, by the primitive simplicity of its elements and the eternal pathos of the human tragedy it sought to symbolize. He loved to kneel down in the cold marble pavement, of which the priest, in a stiff, flowered dalmatic is a ceremonial garment made of Dalmatian wool, slowly and with his white hand moved aside the veil of the tabernacle, or raising aloof the jeweled pattern-shaped monstrance with the pallid wafers, that at times one would fain to think indeed the panis calistus, the bread of angels, through the robes of the garments of the Passion of Christ, breaking the host in the chalice and smitten its breast with his sins. The fuming censers of the grave boys in their lace and scarlet tossed in the air like great gilt flowers, had their subtle fascination with him as he passed out. He used to look with wonder at the black confessionals, and longed to sit in the dim shadow of one of them, listen to men and women whispering through the worn grating in the true story of their lives. He never fell into the error of arresting his intellectual development of any formal acceptance of creed or system, or of mistaking for a house in which to live, an inn that is best suitable for the sojourn of the night, or for a few hours of the night in which there are no stars and the moon, in a trivial mysticism and with marvelous power of making common things strange to us, and the subtle antinomianism, which antinomianism is the theory of evolution by wait, that's not, is that? Oh, they're talking about it. Okay, it's just theory of Darwin's evolution. Subtle antinomianism, and always seemed to accompany it, moved him for a season he inclined to the marital doctrines of the Darwinism movement in Germany, and he found a curious pleasure in tracing the thoughts and passions of men in some pearly cell of the brain, or some white nerves of the body, delighting by the conception of the absolute dependence of the spirits on certain physical conditions, morbid or healthy, normal or deceased. Yet, as it has been said to him before, no theory of life seemed to him to be in importance compared with life itself. He felt keenly conscious of how barren all intellectual speculations in which separate from acting and experiments. He knew from the senses no less than the soul and have their spiritual mysteries to reveal. And so he would now study the perfumes and the secrets of their manufacturers, distill on heavily scented oils and burning odorous gums from the east. He saw that there was no mood for the mind that was not its counterpart in the sensuous life and set himself to discover the true relations. Wondering what there was in frankincense that made one mystical, in orgees that stirred one's passions, and in violets that woke the memory of the dead romances, and in musk that troubled the brain, and in champak that stained the imagination, and seeking often to elaborate real psychological perfumes and estimate the several influences of sweet-smelling roots and scented pollen-laden flowers, of aromatic balms, and of dark and fragrant woods, and spikenard that sickens, of Havania, which makes men mad, and of aloes that are said to be able to expel melancholy from the soul. At another time he devoted himself entirely to music, in a long-laced room, with a vermilion and gold ceiling and walls of olive green lacquer. He used to give curious concerts in which I can't say that. What was it? Nomadics. They are nomads, so mad nomads tore wild music from little zithers, or grave yellow-shawled tunicisms, plucked with the stained strings of monstrous lutes, while grinning black people beat monotonous upon a copper drums, and crouching upon scarlet mats. Slim turbaned Indians blew through long pipes of reed and brass and charmed, or feigned to charm, great hooded snakes and horrible hooded adders. The harsh intervals and shrill discords of barbaric music stirred him at times when Schubert's grace and Chopin's musical sorrows, and the mighty harmonies of Beethoven himself. Till unheeded by the ears, he collected together all the parts of the world, the strongest instruments that could be found, either in the tomes of the dead nations or among the few savage tribes that have survived contact with Western civilizations, have loved to touch and try them. He had the mysterious Juniperus, which is the Austrian composer of the Rio Indians, that women are not allowed to look at, and that even youths may not see till they have been subjected to fasting or scourging, and the earthen jars of the Peruvians had made the shrill cries of birds and flutes of human bones, such as Oso de Ovo heard in Chile, and the sonorous green jaspers are found in Cusco, and gives forth a note of singular sweetness. He had painted gourds filled with pebbles, and rattled them as they were shaken. The long clarion of the Mexicans, in which the former does not blow, but though he inhales the air, the harsh turr of the amazing Amazon tribes, and sound of the sentinels who sit all day long in high trees, and can be heard as it said at a distance of 3 leagues in Tempranazuli, that has 2 vibrating tongues of wood, that is beaten with sticks that are smeared with an elastic gum that obtained from the milky juice of plants. The yato balls from the Aztecs that are hung in clusters like grapes in a huge cylindrical gum drum covered with the skins of green serpents, like the one that Bernal Diaz saw when he went to the Cortezes into the Mexican temples, and of which doleful sounded as he left to vivid of descriptions. The fantastic character of these instruments fascinated him, as he felt a curious delight, as though the art and like nature has her monsters, things of bestial shape, with hideous voices. After some time he wearied of them, and he would sit in his box at the opera, either alone or with Lord Henry, listening in engrossed pleasure of Tannhauser, and seeing the prelude of the great works of art at presentation of the tragedy of his own soul. On one occasion he took up the study of jewels, and appeared at the costume ball as Anne de Jolis, Admiral of France, in a dress covered with 560 pearls. The taste enthralled him for years, and yet said to never have left him. He often spent a whole day settling and resettling the cases and various stones that had collected, such as the olive green Trisboro that turned red by lamplight, the Syrophane with its wire-like line of silver, and pistachio-colored peridot, rose pink and wine-yellow topazes, carbonicles of fiery scarlets and tremulous four-rayed stars. I don't know how I somehow lost my place. Flame red cinnamon stones, orange and violet spinels, and amethyst with the alternative layer of ruby and sapphire. He loved the red gold in the sunstone, and the moonstone's pearly whiteness, and the broken rainbow of the milky opal. He procured from Amsterdam 3 emeralds of extraordinary size and richness of color, and had the turquoise de la Villa Roche that was envy of all the connoisseurs. He discovered wonderful stories also about jewels and Alfonso's Cyrodiili's Disciplina. A serpent was mentioned with eyes of red jacinth, and in Romance history of Alexander the Conqueror of Amenthia was said to have found in the veil of Jordan snakes. With collars of red emeralds going on their backs, there was a gem in the... Hey, this is this. Sorry. I'm gonna take a... I didn't realize how long this chapter was. Okay, I'm gonna take a quick bathroom break real quick. I didn't realize how long this chapter was. I will be right back. I have a be right back screen that has some of my other socials on it. I'll be right back. And I am back. Some more. Hi. Okay, I am back, and I have my water. And my tea is starting to get a bit cold. So I'm gonna try to drink my tea a lot better. This is a good part of the book too, because I feel like I'm like can really easily read this part. And it's I like this part. I just don't know why I like more dense books. I like when they go on about random stuff like that. But I'm gonna say random stuff, like it makes sense why they're talking about that. But like things like I like when he's talking about crystals. Where did I? There was a gem in the Brain of the Dragon. Philostraphus, which is a Greek sophist. So it's a Greek sophist, okay. Philostraphus told us, and by the exhibition of the golden letters in the scarlet robe, the monster could be thrown into the magical sleep and slain. According to the great alchemist Pierre of Boniface, the diamond-rendered of man invisible. And the
Will you
agate...
give him a drink of water for Christ's sake?
Winter, did you see did you look at my followers, Winter? I don't know if you didn't see anything when I mentioned it, so I just wanted to see that. Which also, Winter told me that the Do Everything playthrough thing with the friends thing was a great idea. And they have actually been playing that game. You're good. Yeah. Well, I'm already said I was going to, so I have to now. We're also gonna get a little, like, a cake or something. Like a little tiny one. And put a little candle in it and blow it at the beginning of the stream. I am not famous. Hey, Vex! How are you? I hit 100 followers. Yes. Let's get back into it. By the exhibition of gold letters and scarlet robes, the monster could be thrown into magical sleep and slain, according to the great alchemist Pierre de Boniface. The diamond rendered a man invisible, and the agate of India made him eloquent. The cornelian appraised anger, and the hyacinth provoked sleep, and the amethyst drove away the fumes of wine. The garnet cast out demons, and the hydropictus drived the moon to her color. The selenite waxed and waned with the moon, and the Melicus that discovered thieves could be affected only by the blood of kids. Okay. Leonardus Camillus had seen a white stone taken from the brain of a newly killed toad. That was a certain antidote against poison. The beesword that was found in the hearts of the Arabian deer was a charm that could cure the plague. In the
Lizard. Cheer 14 congrats on
Thank
100
you for the
followers.
14
Wasn't here
bits.
when it happened. Curly underscore is underscore underscore.
You're not
PK
spamming them
cheer
like you
14
normally
bits.
do. Thank you. The Leonardus Camillus had seen a white stone taken from the brain of a newly killed toad. That was a certain antidote against poison. The beesword that was found in the hearts of the Arabian deer was a charm that could cure the plague. In the nests of Arabian birds was the aspilates that, according to Demetrius, kept the wearer from any degree of fire. The king of Ceylon rode through the city with a large ruby in his hand. As a ceremony of his coronation, the gates of the palace shone. The priests were made of sardius, with a horn of the horned snake inwrought, that no man might be poisoned within. Over the gable were 2 green apples, and was 2 carbuncles, so the gold might shine by day and the carbuncles by night. And long strange romance, Margarites of America, it was stated that in the chamber of the queen one could behold all the chaste ladies of the world, encased out of silver, looking through fair mirrors of cerusites, carbuncle sapphires, and green emeralds. Marco Polo. Okay, sorry, I said Marco Polo. It's Marco Polo. It's like the S because it was a weird, like, so at the bottom of the page, different things are marked with different things. That sounds horrible. Different things that most people, like, names are marked with a certain way, and the name for the little symbol for names is like an S. So that's why that's why I said Marco Polo. Marco Polo has seen the inhabitants of Ciopagwe place colored pearls in the mouths of the dead. A sea monster had been enamored with the pearl the diver brought to King Peridos, had slain the thieves and mourned for 7 moons after its loss. After the Huns lured the king into the great pit he flung away, Proculus tells the story. Nor was he ever found again through the empire. Emperor Anastasius offered 500 weight in gold pieces for it. The king of Malabar had shown to a certain Venetian rosary of 304 pearls, one of every god that he worshipped, when the Duke of Valnois, son of Alexander the Sixth, I believe it's the sixth. The sixth. Because it's like a V and then an I. So I think the I and then a V is the fourth, and a V and an I is the sixth, I believe. I'm probably wrong, though. Is it Louis? What's the X in the 12th? That's not the 12th. There's not 12 of them. Oh. France. I thought the X was 12, though. Hi, Possum! I haven't seen you in a bit. How are you? I hit 100 followers this stream. I just 100 followers, so pretty amazing. There's so many of the little Roman numerals. Horrible Roman numerals. His horse was loaded with gold leaves according to Bronteman, and his cap had double rows of rubies that, throughout the green light, Charles of England had riddled its stirrups, hung with 421 diamonds. Richard II had a coat valued at 30,000 marks, which was covered with Ballard's rubies. Hall described Henry the... Oh, I know the 8th. I know that Henry the 8th. Okay. I'm sorry. Thank you. We are going to be doing a Date Everything playthrough with the friend ending for all the characters some point this week. I will be posting on TikTok. And it'll actually be a scheduled stream some point this week. You can see what the next scheduled stream is sometimes. So I'm actually going to make sure I schedule that stream to make sure the most people know about it. Yes. That'll probably take a couple streams, but I want to at least schedule the first one. Yes. Hall described Henry VIII as on his way to the Tower previous to his coronation as wearing a jacket of raised gold. The placard embroidered with diamonds and other rich stones. I hope we can too. And a great balderic about his neck of large balances. The favorites of James I were earrings of emerald satin filigrane. Edward II gave to Piers Gravestone a suit of red gold armor studded with Johnson. This is okay, so I'm not saying it's a boring part, but I feel most people find this boring. But yeah, I'm sorry about that. It's not as boring as the 1984 book part. See that? Where they just read the book for like a whole chapter. That was, yeah. I lost my face. A collar of gold roses with the turquoise stones and a skull-cap paramis with pearls. Henry II wore jeweled gloves reaching to the elbow and a hawk glove sewn with 12 rubies and 52 great ornaments. I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. The ducal hat of Charles the Rash, the last Duke of Burgundy of his race, was hung with pear-shaped pearls and studded with sapphires. How exquisite life had been once, how gorgeous in its pomp and decoration. Even to read the Lecture of the Dead was wonderful. Then he turned his attention to embroideries and to the tapestries that had been formed the office of François of the chill rooms of the southern nation of Europe. As he investigated the subject, he had always had an extraordinary faculty of becoming absolutely absorbed in the moment and whatever he took up. He was almost saddened by the reflection of the ruin that time brought on beautiful and wonderful things. He at any rate had escaped that. Summer followed summer, and the yellow jonquils bloomed and died many times, and the night of horror repeated them the story of shame, and he was unchanged. No winter marred his face, or stained his flower-like bloom. How different it was with material things, where they had passed to. Where were the great crocus-colored robes, which the gods fought against the giants they had worked by brown girls for the pleasure of Athens? Where the huge veritium that Nero had stretched across the Colosseum at Rome, that Titan's sail of purple on which was represented the starry sky, and Apollo driving the chariot. Greek mythology references, I love Greek mythology references. Apollo driving a chariot drawn by white gilt-trained steeds. He longed to see the curious table napped wrought by the priest of the sun, of which were displaying all the daintiness and viands that could be wanted for a feast. The mortuary cloth of King Chilprix with its 300 golden bees, the fantastic robes that excited the indignation of the Bishop of Pontus. They were figured with lions, panthers, bears, dogs, forests, rocks, hunters, and all in facts that a painter can copy from nature, and the coat of Charles of Orleans once wore. On the sleeve of which were embroidered by the first of the song, beginning Madame Je suis joyeuse. I took like 3 years of French and I cannot recall a single thing, so I definitely butchered that. The musical accomplishment of the words being wrought in gold thread, and each note of square shape of those days formed with 4 pearls. He read the room that was prepared at the palace of Reims for the use of Queen Joan of Burgundy was decorated with its 1,321 parrots, made in embroidery and blazoned with the king's arms. 561 butterflies, whose wings were similarly ornamented with the arms of the queen in gold, the whole worked in gold. Catherine de Medicis had a mourning bed for her of black velvet powdered with crescents and suns. Its curtains were of damask with leafy wreaths and garlands, figured upon a gold and silver ground, and fringed along the edges with broderies. The pearls, when it stood in a room hung with rows of its gold queen's devices and cut black velvet upper cloths of silver. Louis the... It's an X, then an I? No, X-I-V. X-I-V, I don't know what that is. I'm horrible at Roman numerals, if you can't tell.
Will you give me a drink of water for Christ's
I'll
sake?
drink my tea first. I think my throat needs my tea more. Had an embroidered carotides 15 feet high in his apartment. The state bed of Sobinsky, King of Poland, was made of Samira gold brocade embroidered in turquoise with verses of the Quran. Oh my. Quran. Its supports were of silver gilts, beautiful chest, and profusely set with the enameled and jeweled medallions it had taken from the Turkish camp before Vienna, and the standard that Mohammed had stood beneath the tremulous gilt of its canopy. And so for a year he sought to accumulate the most exquisite specimens that he could find of textile embroidered work, and the dainty Delhi muslins finely wrought with gold thread, palmettes and stitched over the iridescent beetle's wings, and the Dhaka gauzes. Have a nice night. The most exquisite specimens you could find of textile embroidered work. Again, the dainty Delhi muslins finely wrought with gold thread, palmettes, and stitched over with iridescent beetle wings. The Dhaka gauzes, from their transparency known for the East as woven air and running water. And even dew, with strange figures cloth from Java. Elaborate yellow Chinese hangings, books bound in tawny satins, or fair blue silks, had wrought with fleur-de-lis birds and images, veils of lacis, worked in hungry points, Sicilian brocades, and stiff Japanese velvet. Where did I get Japanese from? Spanish! Spanish velvets, not stiff Spanish velvets. Georgian work, with its gilt coins and Japanese folksquaz. Folksquaz is a decorated silk cloth used as covering for gifts. With its green toned golds and its marvelous pumped birds. It had a special passion also for ecclesiastically vestments, as indeed he had for everything connected with the service of church. As the long cedar chests that lined the west gallery of the house, he had stored away many rare and beautiful specimens of what he had really raiment of the bride of Christ, who must wear purple and jewels and fine linen, that she may hide the pallid may created of jewels and fine. Oh, sorry, I just reread that whole thing. How the pallid migrated body that is sworn of the suffering she seeks in for, and wounded by self-inflicted pain. He possessed a gorgeous cope of crimson silk and gold thread damask, figure a repeating pattern of golden pomegranates and 6 pallid formal blossoms, beyond which one either side of the pineapple devices wrought into seed pearls. The orphanry were divided into panels representing some scenes of the life of the Virgin, and the coronation of the virgins was figured and colored. Silked upon the hood, this was the Italian work of the 15th century. Another cope was of green velvet, embroidered with a heart-shaped group of Indicus leaves, from which spread long-stemmed white blossoms, the details of which were picked out with silver thread and colored crystals. The Morse bore a Saros head in gold thread and colored crystals. The Morse bore a Saros head in gold thread, raised work. The orphans were woven in a diaper of red and gold silk, and were starred with medallions of many saints and martyrs, upon whom was Saint Sebastian. He had chabas, also of amber-colored silk, and blue silk and gold brocade. The yellow silk damask and cloth of gold figured representation of the Passion and Crucifixion of Christ, embroidered with the lions and peacocks and other emblems, dalmatics of white silk and pink silk damask, decorated tulips and dolphins and fleur-de-lis, also frontals of crimson velvets and blue linen, and many corporals, chalice veils, and soteria, in the mystic office of which many of which such things were put. There was something that quickened his imagination, for these treasures of everything that he had collected in his lovely house, there was words to him means of forgetfulness, modes of which he could escape for a season from the far he seemed to him, at times almost too great to be borne. Upon the walls of the lonely locked room, where he spent so much of his boyhood, he had hung with his own hands the terrible portrait whose changing features showed to him the real degradation of his life, and in front of it draped the purple and gold pall of a curtain. For weeks he could not go in there, would forget the hideous painted thing, and get back to his light heart, his wonderful joyousness, his passionate absorption of mere existence. Then suddenly some night he would creep out of the house, go down to the dreadful place near Blue Gate Fields, and stay there day after day until he was driven away. On his return he would sit in front of the picture, sometimes loathing it himself, but filled at many other times. What a pride of individualism that is half the fascination of sin. What smiled with secret pleasure at the mishapen shadow has ever had to bear the burden of which had been his own. After a few years he could not endure to be long out of England, and gave up the villa he had shared in Tourville with Lord Henry, as well as the little white-walled inn-house at Algiers, where they had once spent the winter. He hated to be separated from the picture that was a part of his life. He was also afraid that during his absence someone might gain access to the room, and in spite of the elaborate bars he had caused to be placed upon the door, he was quite conscious that although this would tell them nothing, it was sure the portrait still preserved under the foulness and ugliness of the face is Mark's likeness to himself. What could they learn from that? He would laugh at anyone who tried to taunt him. He had not painted it. What was it to him how vile and full of shame he looked? Even if he told them, would they believe it? Yet he was afraid sometimes when he was down in his great house in Nottinghamshire, entertaining the fashionable young men of his own rank, who were his chief companions, and astounding the country of the wanton luxury and gorgeous splendor of the mode of life, he would suddenly leave his guests and rush back to town to see that the door had not been tampered with, and the picture was still there. What if it should be stolen? The mere thought made him cold with horror. Sure, the world would know the secret then. Perhaps it would have already suspected it. Oh, I'm sorry about the video buffering. Sorry about that. What if it should be stolen? The mere thought made him cold with horror. Surely the world would know his secret then. Perhaps the world already suspected it. For a while he fascinated many. There were not a few who distrusted him. He was very blackballed at the West End Club, for which his birth and social position fully entitled him to become a member. It was said on one occasion that he had brought by his friend, smoking room of the Churchill, the Duke of Berwick, and another gentleman got up in this marked manner and went out. Curious stories became current about him after he had passed his 25th year. It was rumored that he had been seen brawling with foreign sailors in the low den of the distant parts of Whitechapel, that he consorted with thieves and coiners, and he knew the mysterious of the trade. His extraordinary absence became notorious, and when he used to appear again in society, men would whisper to each other in corners or pass him with a sneer, or look at him with cold searching eyes, as though they were determined to discover his secrets. As though insolences and attempted slights he of course took no notice, and that his opinion of most people was frank, debonair manner. His charming boyish smile and his infinite grace of that wonderful youth that seemed never to leave him were in themselves the suspicions answering the calumnies, for they termed them that were circulating about him. It is remarked, however, that some of those who had most intimate with him appeared, after a time, to shun him, and had widely adored him, for his sake had braved all social censures, and set conventions at defiance. I think we'll only do one chapter again after this, except for 2 instead of 2, because I did not realize how long this chapter was. So we're gonna have to do only one more chapter after this. Maybe it just depends how my voice is feeling. But I can already tell my voice is starting to hate me right now. One who had widely adored him for his sake had braved
Hello,
also.
how are you? I am under the water. Please help me. Here too much raining.
One who had wildly adored him, and for his sake had braved all social censure, and set conventions at defiance, were seen to grow pale with shame and horror if Dorian Gray entered the room. Yet these whispers, scandals only increased the eyes of many of his strange and dangerous charm. His great wreath was certain elements of security. Civilized society at least, is never very ready to believe anything of the detriment of those who are both rich and fascinating. It feels instinctively the manner of more importance than the morals, and in its opinions the highest respectability is of which less value of the possessions of the good chef, And after all, it was in poor consolation to be told that the man who had been giving one a bad dinner a poor rind, that irreproachable in his private life, even the cardinal virtues cannot atone for half-cold entrees, as Lord Henry remarked once in his discussion of the subject. There is possibly a good deal to be said over his view. For the canons of good society, as the canons of good society are, or should be, the same as the canons of the arts, for when absolutely essential to him, he should have the dignity of a ceremony as well as unreality, and should combine the insincere characters of a romance play and the wits and beauty of what makes such plays delightful to us. Is insincerity such a terrible thing? I think not. It is merely a method in which one can multiply personalities. Such at any rate was Dorian Gray's opinion. He used to wonder at the shallow psychology of those who conceive the ego of a man in a thing simple, permanent, reliable, and of one essence. To him, man was being a myriad life, a myriad sensations, a complex, multiform creature that bore within itself strange legacies of thought and passions, and whose very flesh was tainted with the monstrous maladies of the dead. He loved to stroll through the gaunt, cold picture gallery of his country house and look at the various portraits of those whose blood flowed through his veins. Here was Philip Herbert, described by Francis Osborne in memory of the reigns of the Queen Elizabeth and King James, as when one was caressed by the court for his handsome face, which has kept not long company. Was it young Herbert's life that he sometimes led? Had some strange poisonous germ crept from body to body till it reached his own? Was it some dim sense of the ruined grace that had made him so suddenly, almost without cause, give utterance in Basil's Hallward studio to the mad prayer that had changed his life? Here in gold embroidery, red droplets, jeweled surcoats, and gilded. Okay, sorry, the word is like split between two lines. Gilded ruff and waistband stood Sir Anthony Shepherd, his silver and black armor piled at his feet. What was this man's legacy been? Had his lover of Genova of Naples bequeathed him such inheritance of sin and shame? Were his own actions merely the dreams of the dead men who had not dared to realize? Here, from the fallen canvas, smiled Lady Elizabeth Devereux, and his gauze and her gaze hood pearl stomacher. The pink slashed sleeves, the flower that was her right hand, has left clasped in an enameled collar of white and damask roses. On a table at her side lay a medallion of an apple. There were large rosettes upon her pointed shoes. He knew her life, and that the strange stories were told about her lover had something of her temperament in him. Those oval, heavy-lidded eyes seemed to look curiously at him. Was it George Willoughby, with his powdered hair and fantastic patches? How evil he looked! The face was a saturnine and swarthy, and sensual lips seemed to be twisted to disdain. Delicate lace, ruffles fell, and lean yellow hands were so overladen with rings. He had been a macaroni of the... I know that was a word people used to describe things. Had been a macaroni of the 18th century, and the friend in his youth of Lord Ferrers, when the second Lord Beckham's the companion of the Prince Regent with his wildest days, and one of the witness of the secret marriage with Mrs. Fesbert. How proud and handsome he was, with his chestnut curls and insolent pose. What passions he bequeathed! The world had looked up to him as infamous. He had... This chapter is so long. Okay, 3 pages left of this chapter. Led the orgies at Carlton House. The star of the garter glittered upon his breast. Beside him hung the portrait of his wife, a pale, thin-lipped woman in black. Her blood also stirred within him. How curious to all see him, his mother was with her Lady Hamilton face and her moist, wine-dashed lips. He knew what he had got from her. He had got from her his beauty, and his passion for the beauty of others. She laughed at him with her loose bachet's dress. There were vine leaves in her hair. The purple spilled from a cup she was holding. The carnations of the painting had withered. But the eyes were still wonderful in the depths of brilliancy of the color. They seemed to follow him. Okay, my throat hates me. How much have we... Okay. I feel like, unfortunately, I know it's only 2 chapters in. We're already 2 hours in. But after these couple pages, unfortunately, we're going to have to stop because my voice does not want to continue reading. So, unfortunately, we're going to have to... This will be the last chapter. Yet one of the ancestors in literature, as well as someone's own race, nearer perhaps in type and temperaments, many of them, and certainly with an influence of which one had absolutely conscious. There was times when it appeared to Dorian Gray that he had lived in active circumstances, but in his imagination had created for him, they had been his brain and his passions, he felt that he had known them all, those strange, terrible figures that had passed across the stage of the world, made sin so marvelous, and so evil, and so subtlety. It seemed to him in some mysterious way their lives had been their own. The hero of the wonderful novel had been so influenced in his life that himself known the curious fancy. In the 7th century he tells how crowned with laurels, lest lightning might strike him, he had sat as Tiberius in the Garden of Capri, reading the shameful books of Elephantis, while dwarfs and peacocks strutted around him, and the flute-player mocks the swiner of the censer, and as Caligula the caroused with the green-shirted jockey in their stables and supped in an ivory manger, with the frontoleted horse as in Dominican had wandered through the corridor lined with marble mirrors, looking round with the haggard eyes and the reflection of the dagger that was the end of his days, and sick with the ennui of the terrible I need to learn Latin at this point. Tadelum vitae, which is the weariness of life, that comes to those of whom denies nothing, and had peered through a clear emerald in the red shambles of the circus then in a litter of pearls and purple, drawn by silver-shod mules, had carried through the street of pomegranates of a house of gold, and heard men cry at Nero Caesar as he passed by, and as Aglabantus had painted his face with colors, and piled the distaff among the women, and brought the moon of a cartilage, by giving him the mystic of marriage to the sun. Over and over again, Dorian used to read this fantastic chapter and the 2 chapters immediately following, in which, in the same curious tapestries of cunning wealth enamels, were pictured the awful and beautiful forms of those whom vices and blood, weariness had made monstrous or mad. Filippo, Duke of Milan, who slew his wife and painted her lips in the scarlet poison that her lover might suck death from the dead thing he fondled. Pietro Barba, the Venetian known as Paul II, had sought in his vanity to assume the title of Foremost, and whose tiara, valued at 200,000 florins, had brought to the price of a terrible sin. Gian Maria Visconti had used hounds to chase living men, and whose murdered body was covered with roses by a harlot who had loved him. The Borgia had his white horse, with a fratricide riding beside him, and his mantle stained with blood of Pietro, so many names! Riero, the young Cardinal Archbishop of Florence, child and minion of Sixtus the Fourth, whose beauty was equalled only by his debauchery, and who received Leonora of Aragon in a pavilion of white and crimson silk, filled with nymphs and centaurs, and gilded a boy he might serve in the feast of Gandermaid or Hylas, Ilison, whose melancholy could be cured only by the spectacle of death, and who has the passion for red blood, and other men as other men had for red wine. The son of the fiend, who was reported in the one who had cheated his father at dice when gambling with him for his own soul, Giamatra Sabo, who mockery took the name of innocent, who into those torrid veins the blood of 3 lads was infused by a Jewish doctor, Sigismondo Malatestis, the lover of Idatoto, the lord of Rimini, whose effigy was burned at Rome, an enemy of God and man, who strangled Polynice with a napkin and gave poison to Genevera d'Este in the cup of emeralds in honor of the shameful passion built a pagan church of her Christian worship. Charles VI, who had wildly adored his brother's wife, that a leper had warned him that the insanity that was coming on him, and who, when his brain had sickened and grown strange, could only be soothed by Saracen cards painted with the image of love and death and madness, and his trim jerkin and jeweled cap and canthuous-like curls. Gravanto Gabani had slewn Aristor with his bride, and Simoto with his page, and those comeliness of such that, as he lay dying in the yellow pizza of Pergua, those who had hated him could not choose but weep, and Atalanta, who had cursed him, blessed him. There was a horrible fascination of them all. He saw them at night, and they troubled his imagination by the day. The Renaissance knew how strange manners of poisoning by the helmet and of light torch, by the embroidered glove of the jeweled fan, by gilded pompadour, and by amber chain, Dorian Gray had poisoned by a book, and there were moments when he looked on evil simply as a mode through which he could realize the conception of the beautiful. Okay. I was supposed to read to chapter 13. That just finished chapter 11. That was like a huge chapter. That was crazy. So we are gonna... Let's see how short these chapters are so I can give you a better idea of what we're gonna be reading tomorrow. Yeah, these chapters are shorter, because my throat does not want to read right now. So we are unfortunately going to end stream tonight. Trying to see. Hey, can we read 4 chapters tomorrow? Okay, I'm confident on 3 chapters tomorrow. Yeah, 3 chapters tomorrow. It's chapter 14. I hope everyone has an amazing night, and hope you look forward to the double stream again tomorrow. What are we gonna do tomorrow? Not sure, maybe fall to Vegas? We can wait. Oh, okay. Okay. Everyone have an amazing day. And I hope you'll have a great night. I knew it was important that you do that. Well, bye-bye.